Right, thank you everybody for attending this hybrid meeting of the Council on Tuesday the 21st of July 2020. We have some members present in the Lancashire room, some joining us from home, and members of the public are welcome to observe from Committee Room 1, where the meeting is being streamed. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Councillor Steve Holgate and I am the Mayor. Councillor Julia Berry is my Deputy Mayor. Also present are councillors who have been asked to introduce themselves in a moment. Please note that it is a Teams meeting. It is being recorded and the stream will be available later on YouTube. For each item, I will invite members to use the raised hand function on your iPad. To make any comments to ensure each member has the opportunity to speak and that they are not speaking over each other. When speaking, please reference the paragraph number to enable everyone to follow you. And please mute your microphone and video feed when you are not talking. Our Deputy Monitoring Officer, Dave, will repeat the motion before the vote is taken to ensure everyone is aware of what is being voted on, and he will also confirm the outcome of the decision. If the technology fails, then I will adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve the issue, or if this is not possible, a new date and time will be organised. Is it possible for Dave to just speak so that the video will enable us to put a face to the voice?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, councillors.
Right, thank you very much. We now know what Dave looks like. Please can I ask all members to confirm that they can hear and speak before the meeting begins. I will call out each member's name. Julia Berry.
Present.
Aaron Beaver.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
That didn't. Ah, right, thank you. Alistair Bradley.
Here, sir.
Thank you. Terry Brown.
Here.
Val Corns.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Mark Clifford.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Jean Cronshaw. Councillor Cronshaw, if you're there, unmute. We'll move on. Graham Dunn.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Christopher France.
Present,
Christopher
Mr. Mayor.
France. Thank you.
Present.
Gordon France.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Margaret France.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Peter Gabbard.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Anthony G.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Danny G.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Tom Gray.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Yvonne Hargreaves.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Alex Hilton.
Yes, I'm present, Mr. Mayor.
Keith Idden.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Hasina Khan. Did that come through, or did I just hear it in the room?
Very fair.
Zara Khan.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Margaret Lees.
Oh, present, Mr. Mayor.
Roy Lees.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Laura Lennox.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Sheila Long.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Adrian Lowe.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Marion Lowe.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Margaret Lynch. Matthew Lynch.
Could you just repeat that, Mr. Mayor?
Matthew Lynch, sorry, not Margaret.
Present. That's my weekend name.
June Molyneux.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Alistair Morewood.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Steve Murphy. Steve Murphy. Councillor Murphy. No. Beverly Murray.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Deborah Platt.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Gillian Sharples.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Paul Sloan.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Joyce Snape. Kim Snape.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
John Walker.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Paul Walmsley. Neville Whittam.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Alan Whittaker.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Peter Wilson.
Present, Mr. Mayor.
Right. I'll just go back to those who haven't piped up. Paul Walmsley. No. Steve Murphy.
Present, Mr. Mayor. Sorry.
Jean Cronshaw. Right. Okay. I think that pretty much covers those who are with us today. Moving on to the first item, these apologies for absence. I've got apologies from Martin Boardman and John Dalton. Does there anyone else wish to put other people's apologies that have not already been given to me? No. Okay. Minutes of the last meeting of Tuesday the 30th of June 2020 of the Council. Decisions from the 7th of April to the 11th of June 2020, pages 5 to 14. These minutes are there in your agenda item. Sorry. Are there any issues to raise of the accuracy of these minutes? I will take silence as an indication that they are to be approved. Sorry, yes. Councillor Beavers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to move that the records are a true and present representation of the last meetings.
Right. Does the leader of the council want to second that?
Wait to say that.
I think I'm on furlough, Mr. Mayor, because the Beavers took my job.
Nonetheless, will you please second them?
I'll second those, Mr. Mayor. I go to follow a good man.
Right, okay. Given that there's been nobody say that they're opposed to them or have any queries, I will ask Dave, please, to confirm that the proposal is that the minutes of the meeting.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Yes, but the recommendation is that the minutes of the meeting be approved, Mr. Mayor.
So, and we've indicated that we're in favour of that. Is that correct? Yes. Thank you. Dave, will you confirm the outcome of the vote, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the minutes have duly been approved.
Right, okay. I'll get the hang of this in a little while. Item 2 is a declaration of any interests. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interests in respect of matters contained in this agenda. As this is a virtual meeting, if a member has a pecuniary interest, they are requested to leave the call completely rather than just mute their microphone. The member can then rejoin the call following the completion of the item in question. I have an indication that Peter Gabbett, Councillor Gabbett, has a personal interest in item 18, but I don't think that precludes him from taking part. Am I correct with her, Dave?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if it's merely a personal interest, then the councillor may take part in the meeting and vote.
Right. I also believe Councillor Mark Clifford wishes to declare an interest. Is that correct, Councillor Clifford?
Yes, it is, Mr Mayor, as Chair of Clanley Woods Parish Council.
On which item does that refer to?
Item 18, please.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. We move on to item 3, which is the mayoral announcements. As you can imagine, with things being run slightly differently, the position and the means by which the mayor goes about his or her business is also severely restricted, and therefore I am having to, along with colleagues, think of different ways of fulfilling that role. And in terms of raising money for the good causes that I've chosen to support, we're going to start with an online raffle. As you know, I'm having to look at these things alternatively, and I need the support of members and members of the public and the community generally. So far, I've been collecting vouchers from many local businesses who have been extraordinarily generous. So if any members or anyone else has any contacts with businesses across the borough of Chorley that are willing to support the mayor in raising funds for the local organisations, then if you could ask those businesses if they would donate a voucher, that would be really useful in achieving our objectives. Thank you for members who have already arranged vouchers. It is really appreciated. But the more prizes that we get, the more we can raise for my local charities and community groups. As a reminder, these are St Catherine's Hospice, Inspire Youth Zone, Chorley Green Living and Chorley Sheds. I just mentioned that I also, with the support of comms and IT and Democratic Services, I've managed to get a Facebook page up and running, and I will be populating that with some crazy things I intend to do, like part of the Cleveland Way and cycling around the borough of Chorley, to encourage people to donate to a Just Giving app that will also be found on the Facebook page. So we have a few irons in the fire. With regards to the general way in which we raise funds, I have the support of colleagues in putting on events, but these are all, of course, tentative, based on the way in which we managed to deal with COVID over the next 9 months or so. The one I'm particularly looking forward to, well, I'm looking forward to them all, but the one that is a bit different will be a James Bond 007 themed evening, hopefully in this room in November, to coincide with the launch of the new James Bond film. So you'll all have to go out looking for your Mr. Bond or Miss Moneypennies following the close of this meeting. That's it for mayoral announcements. So with that, I will move on to item 4, which is public questions. Members of the public have been requested the opportunity to ask questions. No public questions have been received. So we'll move on to item 5, which is Chorley Council Annual Report, pages 15 to 32 in your agenda. And this is to consider and receive the report of the Deputy Chief Executive, and that will be spoken to and presented by Councillor Bradley, not Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we're here to do is to note the Council's annual report, which I think was circulated with the papers, the full report, which runs to many pages. I'm not proposing to go through it all in great detail, but what I will do is probably refer to the summary report, which is in your Council papers. Mr. Mayor, it seems a long time ago, the year 2019 to 2020, a lot's happened in the very first part of 2020 itself, and therefore we have already moved on a little bit since this report was produced. But what I think it does, as it says on paragraph 3, details what this council's priorities are, were and will remain to be, no doubt, in the future, which is to involve residents in improving their local area and also to improve equality of access for all, to ensure that our residents have clean, safe and healthy homes and communities, to have a strong local economy that supports our residents, and to be an ambitious council that does more to meet the needs of residents and the local area and is always striving to do more. And therefore, Mr Mayor, I think the report, if you read it in detail and if you read the summary, which I'll take you through in a moment, certainly does that. The year of 2019 through to 2020, 2020, was a time of many things being delivered across our borough. And under each of the headings of what we've done, I think members can draw conclusions, both what the council's done across the borough, but also what the council's done within their own wards. We have, Mr Mayor, at all times strived to deliver not just for the town centre or the areas of Chorley that are fortunate, but to deliver for all wards equally. So, for example, Mr Mayor, under the first heading, which is in paragraph 10, section A, about involving residents in improving their local area, we've obviously worked very hard to enable residents to stay in their own homes at times when they may not be very well. We've spent or invested £890,000 on home adaptations, helping residents to live independently for longer. We've also done lots of work around transport to, again, enable access for all. It refers there, Mr Mayor, to bus stops in Buckshaw and improving the wider access. I don't know if we're getting feedback, Mr Mayor. Yeah, it'd be helpful because I can't hear myself.
Somebody even muted me without me knowing about it there, so I was talking to myself again. Yeah, please,
I'll carry on. Sorry.
Remember to mute. Yeah, keep going.
Okay, so we've been proud to improve transport connections. We've also encouraged our residents to take part in volunteering through the time credit scheme and involving themselves in communities. And what we see yet again, Mr Mayor, is that when we put a little bit in, the residents have surely give an awful lot more back. And they help themselves and they help their communities every year in bigger and bigger ways. We've also, as it refers there, done a lot of work refurbishing the Clayton Brook Village Hall to create the community cafe and creating the Adlington Friendship Group to combat social isolation as examples of ways we've tried to involve all residents in their own areas. And we will continue to do individual projects in individual areas of the borough, but what we'll also do, Mr Mayor, is work across the borough to try and make sure that people keep having improved areas and equality of access to, in particular, changes around IT, which we've seen recently with people being locked down in their own homes with COVID, that they can still access services and access the facilities and the services that they need. The second priority, Mr Mayor, was clean, safe and healthy communities. Again, we've continued to deliver in Chorley a large number of affordable homes. We've, again, Mr Mayor, seen a reduction in the number of empty properties across our borough, and I take my hat off to those members and those officers who've been part of that programme to help reduce the number of empty properties we have across the borough. I can't quite believe this, Mr Mayor, but this year was the first year that we actually saw the youth zone do a full year of service within the borough. It seems like the youth zone has been there forever already. It's a fixture and fitting of our borough, and with a number of visits that are in the many, many thousands and a membership of 5,500 young people, Chorley continues to be at the forefront of the on-site group in terms of the access of young people to its services, which is a good thing for Chorley. And it's not just us saying that, the police say it, schools say it, parents say it, the whole community says it, and the youth zone will continue to be a fundamental part of our community for years to come, hopefully. We've also been spending lots of money on improving play areas and play provision within all across the borough, and we will continue doing that through the next year, because some of those projects have been delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic. But we are investing hundreds and hundreds of thousands across play areas, but also millions, not least in the Westway development at Astley Village, which I'm personally quite excited about, Mr Mayor, because it will bring state-of-the-art sports facilities that this borough has not seen for many a year. And therefore, Mr Mayor, we need to keep striving to be at the forefront of provision of that kind of thing in Lancashire. The third strand to our strategy, and therefore our annual report, is about a strong local economy. And not only have we attracted many tens of thousands of people to events across Chorley, including the Chorley Flower Show, Chorley Live, Picnic in the Park and the Christmas attractions, what we've also done, Mr Mayor, is continue to get people in week by week to support our town centre businesses, to make sure that Chorley is seen as a visitor destination, both for its beautiful countryside, its pretty villages, its vibrant market and town centre, but also because it's a lovely place to spend time for anybody. We've also tried to support businesses in our usual way by intervening directly where we've had to. So the Strawberry Fields Digital Hub is part of that, which provides that state-of-the-art business setting for digital and creative businesses. But even beyond that, Mr Mayor, we've helped 570 jobs be created across the borough through our direct intervention and many more through the indirect intervention. Because you'll be well aware yourself, Mr Mayor, we do many business events here in this town hall, but across the wider borough, supporting businesses through workshops, etc., to help that businesses that set up and want to grow in Chorley can grow, they can employ more people, they can contribute to our local economy. And then the last point in the summary document shows that we've helped effectively 961 businesses in the year across the borough, and hopefully all those businesses have benefited from that assistance and support. But all the time, Mr Mayor, we strive to be an ambitious council to go further, to do more for the borough. And one of the things that we've seen particularly is efficiency of the council. So there's a couple of references in the summary document to improving our performance as a council and delivering for our residents directly. But also one of the major step forwards we've made in last year is to start to work more closely with our neighbours in South Ribble to deliver joint shared services, real joint shared services that will help transform both councils. That's not for our benefit, Mr Mayor, although I'm sure it will bring benefits to this council directly. It's there to improve the service to our residents, and by doing that we can deliver for residents and hopefully provide their cheaper, better, more efficient services on a day-by-day basis. One of the other things we're doing is working very closely with other partners, particularly through the public service reform group that we have here at Chorley. And you can see some of the direct, and all the councils have been involved in some of the direct outcomes of that through the pivot and the multi-agency working that we do, that has helped transform some lives within Chorley and has certainly helped many people avoid going into crisis over the last year. Again, Mr Mayor, given recent events nationally and with the pandemic that we've just experienced and hopefully coming out of, I think there'll be more call for that kind of joined up working that we can look to deliver with our partners. And we are stronger when we work together with others than when we do things on our own. The spending that we have done is referred to about where we've spent our money and some of the things that we've done. We've already referred to the play and open space budget, which is the envy of much of Lancashire. We've spoke about the digital hub and the Westway Sports Centre, which again are the envy of Lancashire and wider afield. But we've also done, at the same time as that, Mr Mayor, is doing some very important, if you like, things that we should do and we should feel very proud of doing. So the Syrian refugee programme that we were part of here in Chorley, I think has delivered real outcomes for people who, through no fault of their own, found themselves in some very difficult situations. It has been challenging, it has been interesting, it has been all the things that councils sometimes wish they hadn't done. But being part of that programme has certainly encouraged us to do more of that kind of thing in the future, Mr Mayor. And I think it's the part of Chorley to set the example when it comes to these kind of programmes, to be in and doing it and being at the forefront again of doing the right thing by those people in the world who perhaps events have not been kind to. In terms of future challenges, Mr Mayor, and we need, when you reflect on a year's delivery and a year's performance, you always have to think ahead. I think we are in uncertain times. Over the next 12 months, this council will face not only the effects of a global pandemic and the effects of Brexit and all the things that we had this time last year, but also we have now got to face the effects of COVID-19 and how we recover from that, both as Chorley, as the wider Lancashire and as part of the UK, I think will be very interesting. That means it's very hard to predict what's going to happen in the next 12 months. But the one thing I can take heart from, Mr Mayor, with this report in front of me is that Chorley is well placed to do the right thing by its residents, to support its residents and to carry on delivering for its residents when many other parts of the country are going to struggle. And that, Mr Mayor, is due to excellent work by our officers, excellent work by our councillors, but most of all by some very, very excellent work by the people of Chorley, who continue to deliver for themselves and for the wider world. The report is noted, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bradley. It is now time for me to invite members to use their raise hands function on their iPads to make an indication of whether they want to make comments or speak. In doing that, Ruth will give me an indication of who wishes to speak and in what order. Councillor Lees.
Thank you,
Councillor Roy
Chair.
Lees.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was mentioned to me today that the time credits may be stopped in the near future. Can you assure me that this is wrong and that the volunteers that we depend a lot on will be ultimately rewarded for their efforts? Thank you.
Councillor Bradley.
I'm looking for Councillor Murray, who sat behind me, but we don't. We obviously are always reviewing the performance of time credits and other systems of rewarding members. Yeah. So we are constantly reviewing, but there will be methods utilised not dissimilar to time credits and the systems we previously used to reward people for engaging in their local communities. Time credits are only part of what we do in that case. And Councillor Lees, I hear what you're saying, and I will reassure you that volunteering and those volunteers who spend so much time in our communities will be recognised and rewarded. It may be through a different methods and changed methods, but it will still be the same basis on rewarding people for helping their own communities.
Right, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. My agenda indicates that we asked for a proposer and a seconder, but that's later on after the debate. However, I'm aware that Councillor Wilson has something to say as Deputy Leader. Would you like to come in now?
Only, Mr. Mayor, that you need to have a seconder to a report, so I'll second it for you. I didn't want you to be in breach of your own constitution.
No, thank you. My agenda suggests that we take the proposer and seconder after the debate. Whether that's correct or not, I don't know, but I'm just going off the script. So thank you for seconding the report. Councillor Bradley, have you not just presented it but proposed it?
I said I proposed it, Councillor, in my end of my concluding remarks, so hopefully I have done.
Okay, so clearly I'm not going to jail quite yet. Right, is there anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Walker. I think you're muted, mate. I think you're muted.
My apologies. I thought it'd been. I'm not going to make a lot of fuss about the annual report. It makes good reading for the residents of Chorley. One thing I want to ask is the amount of money spent on grants during the pandemic. It says on the report here that £21 million have been spent. How has that been distributed, and where does the money come from?
Good question. Who wants to answer that?
It could take several hours, Mr. Mayor, and I will send the full report out to Councillor Walker.
We don't have several hours.
But in principle, the government obviously has allocated 2/3 waves of funding, Councillor Walker, of grant monies, and they set the rules of who gets what. What we are is a delivery vehicle, so we interpret locally who gets what in terms of in line with those rules. So yes, roughly you're right. I think the first tranche of monies was 24 million, of which we distributed at the last count 22 million of that money. That's passported through us by the government, from the government. We then have to return who we're giving that money to the government, and they do an audit on that to make sure it's gone to the right businesses, and different business sizes get different amounts of money, and that's set nationally. We for information, Councillor Walker, we started dispersing that money before we received it from government, because we thought they were a good risk and we wanted to get that money through to our businesses as soon as possible. So we, if you like, put a float through to put some money through and kept that going, but the government were as good as the word of the money landed when it should have landed. We haven't got rid of all the money because some of the businesses, bizarrely, who we contacted, who we think are eligible, haven't come back and said that they want that money, because lots of businesses will be in different states in terms of They may no longer be trading, they may have moved address, there may be lots of reasons why they have not claimed that money. They may just not want to. We will continue to try to identify those businesses, and we are doing currently, and then any money that's left over will have to be returned to government. That was the first tranche of money. The second tranche of money came through as a lot less. I think it was another million and a half, and that was to plug some of the holes that were identified in the first tranche of money, because the government realised that their rules excluded certain people, and therefore we're just in the throes at the minute of distributing some of that second tranche of money, and that should be done in the next few weeks. The criteria are different because the idea of that second tranche of money is generally smaller amounts aimed at organisations and businesses that missed out first time round, but perhaps still evidence need. But I can get a full report from Mark Lester and Asim to you, which will detail where all that money's gone to. There's no problem with that.
Okay. Can I come back? Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. All the money's been distributed. Have all the companies you've distributed money to reopened after they've been closed down, or have many closed down?
That again is a different question, Councillor Walker. Many are just reopening still, so a lot have reopened. Some only closed very briefly. Some have reopened early on. Some are opening now. Some still can't open because their business is not in a situation where it can reopen. There will be an audit in due course. I think the government, one of the questions they have will be, have money given to companies, then a company not reopened, and we will have to monitor and track that. But bearing in mind, and I'm thinking how many businesses we've helped so far, it's several thousand, if not 10,000. There's a lot of business to do. So, but at the moment, I'm not aware of any. But no doubt some will come out.
Thank you.
Okay, are you happy with that, Councillor Walker? Thank you. I believe Councillor Wilson, did you say something? No, only that he seconded it. Right, so, Councillor Clifford. Councillor Clifford, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say it's an excellent report, and I'm very proud to see that in the year we declared a climate emergency at Chorley Council. I'm very happy to see the £500,000 of initial funding to be able to start mitigating some of the effects to make Chorley Borough a cleaner, healthier and nicer place, and certainly to improve the environment and look forward to the future. It's an exciting time for Chorley Council, so thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a statement rather than a question, which is absolutely fine. Does anyone want to respond in any way? Leader?
I think, Mr. Mayor, I was worrying the question was how much more are you going to give next year, but he didn't, Councillor Clifford didn't ask it, so I'll not encourage him.
Right, okay. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? If not, could I ask, we're at the end of the debate, so we've got a proposer and a seconder already. Dave, can you please confirm the proposal?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the proposal is simply to note the report.
Right. Now, if we were to do a talk through of all the names of the councillors, we would be here until tomorrow. So given the proposal is to note the report, what I'm suggesting is that anyone who wishes to oppose or is not happy with the report, please indicate. And if there is silence, I will take it that the report is to be noted and agreed. Right, okay. Dave, could you please give an indication of the vote?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Mayor, in those circumstances, the report has been duly noted.
Right, okay, thank you. That's the end of item 5. Moving on to item 6, Executive Cabinet. To consider a general report on the Executive Cabinet held on the 13th of February, 12th of March and 18th of June 2020. Councillor Bradley, once again, it's for you to present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The papers speak for themselves. Can I propose that the reports that are documented for those 3 meetings are noted, and that members ask any questions if required? Okay,
that was moved swiftly on to invite members to use their hand function on the iPad if they wish to speak. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to second before we go on to questions?
I can do, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to. Although you are on your papers in front of you, you did do it correctly. I have to say, I apologise previously. I was following the old routine.
It's not often I get it absolutely
lockdown
right.
and pre-spread out in the town hall.
It stretches the brain cells, believe me, but we're getting there. So, yeah, so it's proposed and seconded. Is there anyone wish to speak to it or ask questions? Right, so we're at the end of the debate because there hasn't been one. Dave, can you please confirm the proposal?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor. The proposal is simply to note the report, but I should say if you're simply noting the report, I don't think there's any need to take a vote. So if it's just to note the report, then we can proceed on that basis.
Okay, so the proposal is to note the report. If you object to noting the report, please speak now. If not, it will be noted. I hear nothing. Therefore, I declare that the report is noted. We're doing well now. Right, moving on to item 7, which is the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and Task and Finish Groups. They're on pages 179 to 190 of your agenda papers, and we are to receive the consider the general report of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on the 23rd of January, the 27th of February, the 2nd of July, and the Overview and Scrutiny Performance Panel held on the 30th of January and the 5th of March, and the task group update. Councillor Walker, this is your committee, or it was, so please can you present this item? You're on mute, mate. Fickle.
Can I ask the councillors to accept the general report of the meetings that the mayor just read out? There's the ordinary committee, the performance panel, and also the task group update.
Seems like you've been very busy. Can I invite members if they wish to raise their hands on the iPad function if you want to make a comment or ask a question?
I second that report. I second that report, Chair.
Okay. The time at which we call in a seconder seems to be a moot point in itself, but we'll get there. So before the debate. Okay, right. It's not what it says on my papers, but never mind. Okay, so is there anyone wish to make comment on that, those series of reports? If not, Dave, it's to note the report, is it not?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation is simply to note the report.
Right, okay. And the silence indicates that we're happy to do that. So with that, we'll move on to item 8, which is the scrutiny report back. Chorley Council's annual report on overview and scrutiny for 2019 and 20, pages 37 to 48. To receive and consider the Council's annual report on overview and scrutiny. Councillor Walker, it's another one for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It gives me great pleasure to ask the Council to receive the annual report of Overview and Scrutiny Committee 2019 and 20. And may I start by thanking all the directors, officers and exec members for attending the various meetings during the last year, and also thank members of the committee for their time and work that has been done over the past year. It is only when you read the report you realise how much scrutiny has been done during the year. And finally, I must thank the officers in Democratic Services for their help and advice. None of this work would take place without their assistance. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Walker. I'm going to reshuffle the agenda slightly and ask for Councillor Lees to second the report before we move to the debate.
I second that report, Chair.
Thank you. So I now invite members to use the raise hand function on the iPad if you wish to make any comments. No, we don't have any. Dave?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation again is simply to note the report.
Right, okay. Are we happy to note the report? We'll take that as yes. Thank you very much indeed. Item 9 is the Governance Committee, and that is on your pages now 191 to 198. Is to receive and consider the general report of the Governance Committee meeting held on the 22nd of January and the 1st of July. Councillor Deborah Platt, please could you present this report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I present this report. It is to receive and consider the general report of the Governance Committee, as the Mayor's mentioned. Thanks.
Thank you. Right, and with further ado, who's seconding that report?
I will second that, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you, Councillor G. Is there any debate or questions to be had on that? If so, please indicate in the usual way. No, so that ends the debate. Dave, it's you again.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, again, the recommendation is to note the report.
Right. If there is silence, I will take it the report is noted. The report is noted. Item 10, Combined Authority for Lancashire. Now then, this is a good one. Pages 49 to 52, to consider and receive the report of the Deputy Chief Executive, and it will be presented by Councillor Bradley, the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Flitting between screens and reports, so bear with me, please. I'm glad you think it's going to be a good one, Mr. Mayor. I'll let you lead the discussions and negotiations in future in Lancashire. Trust me, Mr. Mayor, they are nothing if not tortuous. Members will be aware that way back in 2015, there were discussions about combined working in Lancashire, and combined working probably commenced. Since then, it's progressed by fits and starts. But in 2016, according to the papers we got in front of us, this council agreed to be part of a combined authority, combined working group, combined arrangement, I think is the best way of putting it, in Lancashire. So we voted that part of this proposal through. There are a couple of other bits of that which I'll come to shortly, but in principle that has been this council's position, and it may surprise some members to know, Mr. Mayor, but we've continued working towards that goal in fits and starts over the last 4 years, because Mr. Mayor, I believe, and I think this council believes it is, as we said earlier, the right thing to do is to work with partners, to work with others, because together we're stronger. This report details some of the reasons behind that. We see combined working in Greater Manchester, in Merseyside, in parts of Yorkshire, and wider across the country. So Lancashire has strived to work together. This report has 3 proposals that the council confirms in principle to becoming a constituent authority of the Lancashire Combined Authority, subject to final agreement of the arrangements. That, Mr. Mayor, I would argue we've already took the decision to do a number of years ago, and therefore that's a reaffirmation. The next part is perhaps a new addition, which is that the council confirms its willingness to the inclusion of a directly elected mayor in any devolution deal, which may come from a combined authority in Lancashire, subject to its final agreement and to the final arrangements. And I must stress, Mr. Mayor, there are no proposals in any detail that I can bring to this meeting at this point in time on that item, on that matter. And then the third item is more a statement from Chorley that the council reaffirms its view that local government reorganisation is needed to create sustainable public services and best serve the residents of the borough. That reflects again a decision that this council took back in 2015-2016 around wanting to see different government structures or local government structures in Lancashire. And at that time, Chorley's view was that it was best served by a unitary Chorley, independent and fully functioning as other councils do in Lancashire, such as Blackburn and Blackpool. That obviously has never come to pass, Mr. Mayor. So again, I think members should bear in mind that what this statement is a statement of intent. The detail is not there, but we have been asked by the combined grouping within Lancashire to reaffirm our commitment to these, certainly the first 2 points, on the grounds that all councils in Lancashire have been asked to do that, because this is the wording that was agreed between the 12 district leaders, 2 unitary leaders and the leader of county council at a meeting a month and a half ago. So while some people have been busy in lockdown or not busy in lockdown, Lancashire leaders, following discussions that they had with government at the back end of last year and the early part of this year, had an opportunity to reaffirm their commitment to combined working. And Councillor Wilson attended a meeting of Lancashire leaders in February with civil servants where it was spelt out that if Lancashire looked to commit to working together, the government would have a conversation with it around changes in future arrangements. The devolution of monies to Lancashire being number 1 and potential reorganisation being number 2. It also refers in the report, Mr. Mayor, about the fact that I think it's in paragraph 13, 14, that the government are currently, no, paragraph 18, sorry, Mr. Mayor, the government are currently developing a white paper for local government reform and local government reorganisation, which we are expecting to see in the autumn. Obviously, this has been delayed slightly because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but what we were being briefed about in February from the government is likely to come forward in the autumn. That paper is eagerly awaited by many authorities, and the paragraphs 19 and 20 also explain some of the commentary that's come from government lately in the House of Commons and from LGA conferences and through statements by ministers suggesting that some of its requirements for reorganisation around unitary authorities, etc. That, Mr. Mayor, is a wholly different debate. I suspect it's a debate that we'll be involved in as a council, and I'm not proposing to get into that debate this evening, particularly, again, because it's not fully formed. It's not fully formed from within Lancashire, and it's not fully formed from government. So, in a way, we'll be discussing it theoretically. What we have in front of us is 3 proposals to become a constituent member of the Combined Authority, to accept a willingness to have a directly elected mayor as part of a devolution deal, which must mean that some kind of money or devolution of powers comes with that, and that this council believes that there is some element of reorganisation required to deliver the best services for our residents. And that is the proposal that we're making here tonight, and hopefully will be being considered across town halls in Lancashire over the coming weeks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson, you're seconding this item and wish to speak now or later?
No, I'd second the proposal, Mr. Mayor. I don't think there's anything to add to what Councillor Bradley said.
No. I would just say that I agreed it's quite difficult to debate a blank piece of paper, which is essentially what we've got. So it's fair enough to restrict the debate to what we're looking at now. Is there, and I'd be very surprised if there is nobody wishing to speak on this. So could I invite anyone who wishes to speak to raise their Councillor Alan Whittaker.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Sorry to introduce a note of dissent into what's gone on this evening, which has all been very positive. I have a feeling of deja vu about this. Remember, I was involved in a debate about a unitary Chorley some years ago, as Councillor Bradley has alluded to. And I'm very much opposed to all 3 of these elements. First of all, a unitary Lancashire. I'll only say, if anybody can find any similarities between Lytham and Barnoldswick and Skelmersdale and Lancaster, then they're better than I am at doing that. There is nothing like that. The communities are so different. There would be little accountability, it seems to me. And I just give an example. Even with Lancashire, we are in a 2-tier system here in Lancashire and have been since '74. And I remember all the disruption, although I wasn't involved very much in it, local government in those days, but in '74. But yesterday I tried to get some urgent attention to a social services case at Lancashire. And if you've ever tried ringing up Lancashire to get through to anybody, you get to speak to somebody and you get about 6 options. And you get to option 3 and you get another 6 options. And then you get to you make another choice, and then you get another 3 or 4 options. And eventually you get through to somebody, and it took me 15 minutes to talk to somebody. And then I had to be put through and leave a message. Now, to think that that happening now, just think about what that would happen if there was a unity authority across Lancashire. We would, you know, there would be presumably there would be different centres of communication, and the amount of time that it would tend to get down that route of communication and back to where you want to do. So I just don't think that's a feasible thing, and I'm putting my marker down now. I don't accept that. The second thing is about, and I accept what Councillor Bradley said about directly elected mayors and so on. I'm not convinced about directly elected mayors. It puts a very powerful position for an individual, accompanied by some like-minded acolytes. And I'm not sure that that's a very democratic way of resolving residents' concerns. I don't think, and I think it says in paragraph 3 of the recommendation, I don't think that any of these things will serve the interests of Chorley residents. I listened to what's said about resources and money. Given the COVID amounts that have been made available, I can't imagine that this government will be making lots of money that be worthwhile to local authorities to try and get into some meaningful discussions. I don't think this is a right way forward. I think there is much to be said about devolving resources to local authorities. You know, the other option that was discussed with 3 unitary authorities, South Ribble, Chorley and West Lancashire. Well, it's a little less problematic for me. Preston, Lancaster and Ribble Valley, Burnley, Blackburn and Pendle. Can you imagine the good folk of Burnley being in cahoots with the good folk of Blackburn? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. So I am not going to support this, Chairman. I'll give you a notice now. I am going to abstain. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Thank you. I suspected there wouldn't be unanimity on this one. So is there anyone else, Ruth? Councillor Dunn, you wish to speak?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I can.
I will try and be brief. I mean, I think the purpose of the sort of combined authority for Lancashire with a mayor is to put certain functions there, including, for example, regional economic planning and certain highways functions and things like that. I'm not going to be precise about it, and that to be overseen by a mayor. Now, I'm not personally that keen on a mayor, but if having a mayor is a condition for bringing additional resources to help with what one might call regional or sub-regional planning to Lancashire, I'm very happy to go along with it, and therefore I am in support of the first proposal and content to go along with the second one. With regard, I don't want to open up the can of worms with the third one, but I mean, my understanding from listening to District Council Network discussions on this is that it is quite possible, or the most likely outcome, is that there will be a good deal of arm twisting to participate in a reorganisation of local government, with the government having a particular size of authority in mind, and that if we do not act and get our act together and look to create at least the possibility of an organisation which would meet the government's requirements, we stand in danger of having it done to us. So that just for example, if we did nothing, we could find ourselves put into a Preston, South Ribble and Chorley grouping, or we could find ourselves in a Chorley, South Ribble and West Lancashire, or something else entirely. There is a good deal of uncertainty about this, and it is not certain that the government will insist upon these sizes of councils. They say they won't accept anything as big as one Lancashire running everything. They say they won't accept anything as small as Chorley is, but they may. What we've got to do is get a pretty firm idea of what we do want and to actually fight and take action on it. Now, Councillor Whitaker and I share a certain history. We may have historical perceptions, but we've got to live in the world which we're actually living in and try to do the best in the circumstances. Therefore, I'm very content to support this motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Walker, yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, our group fully support this recommendation. Of course, it is a government-led proposal, which has again been approved by County Council. And without this proposal, of course, money will not be forthcoming to a smaller authority like ourselves. So we will wait now and see what's in the white paper, and hopefully we'll get cracking and get combined authorities done and dealt with in the very near future. Thank you.
Right. Is there anyone else giving an indication, Ruth? No. In which case, I'll ask Councillor Bradley to come back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I am formally proposing those three paragraphs. And just to respond to the councillors who've spoken, Councillor Whitaker gave a fairly damning identification of what some of the problems are currently, that you can't get an answer when you ring up certain councils because it doesn't work for residents currently as it is. I share many of his concerns around the outlined and many of his conjecture about what might happen, but we don't know. We can disagree or agree with a blank piece of paper, but at the moment this is the wording that all of Lancashire's come up with, and for those of us in relationships and what have you, we usually have to compromise when we're in relationships with others. We don't get everything we want. We get a bit of what we want and a bit of what somebody else wants. So therefore this is a common wording that's going out to every council equally. Councillor Dunn's points are also very pertinent around the fact that we have been where we've been in the past. We are going to have to move forward in a different framework, and this is one of the ways that the government will make us dance for funding and for money. And just to touch on what he said, as well as Councillor Walker said, I was aware there was a Conservative group LGA meeting. Don't ask me, Mr. Mayor, how I know that was what went on today, which set a lower number of 300,000 and an upper number of 500,000. So therefore that would preclude a county unitary authority in Lancashire. But all this is very much still from the government in development, and therefore I don't really rely on any of the information that people are saying. You can pay your money, you take your choice, but I think what we end up seeing will be very different than what people are perhaps saying now and have said in the past. So I think we wait and see what comes out, as members suggested. So can I make again the proposal that the recommendations in paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 are adopted by this council? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. There's no further questions. Nobody's indicated they want to speak. So we will say that the debate is over on this one. Dave, can you read out the recommendations, please, before we vote on this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The leader has already taken us through the recommendations, but nevertheless, for the sake of clarity, the first recommendation is that the council confirms in principle to becoming a constituent authority of a Lancashire combined authority, subject to its final agreement to the final arrangements. Secondly, that the council confirms its willingness to the inclusion of a directly elected mayor in a devolution deal for Lancashire, again subject to its final agreement to the final arrangements. And thirdly, that the council reaffirms its view that local government reorganisation is needed to create sustainable public services and best serve the residents of the borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to use a little bit of discretion now, and I'm going to take the order in reverse. So first of all, I'm going to ask anyone who wishes to oppose this recommendation, please indicate now. Anyone who wishes to abstain, please indicate now. Sorry.
I'm abstaining.
Do you want to? No, he wants to abstain. No. Yeah. So I'm asking now. Is there anyone out there, councillors, wish to abstain? Councillor Whitaker indicates he wishes to abstain. Is there anyone else wishing to abstain? Before we move on, because I'm going to make the assumption, I think I'm fair in doing that, Dave, that anyone else who hasn't spoken tentatively is in favour of the recommendation. Speak now. Okay, Dave, can you announce the result of that vote, please?
Well, on that basis, Mr. Mayor, the three recommendations we've taken you through are carried. They're approved.
Okay, thank you very much. That was the one I was frightened of all night. So we'll move on to item 11, and it's the updated shared services agreement, presumably between Chorley and South Ribble, pages 53 to 108. Councillor Bradley, you're presenting this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the report is very straightforward and simple, very detailed, but very straightforward and simple. Basically, Chorley and South Ribble are now doing more shared services through the events recently than we were previously. There was a previous agreement in place since 2007. The new arrangements are to reflect the greater amount and greater complexity of shared working, and therefore is merely probably an extension and a reaffirmation and an updating of many of the existing terms. It covers all kinds of things that you'd expect, financial arrangements, standing orders, liabilities, staffing, etc., all the scrutiny and audit as well. It's highly detailed. It's been through the Joint Shared Services Committee, which members from all parties and both councils attend, and was accepted by that committee. I'm happy to take questions on it, Mr. Mayor, but in principle, I should see no reason to oppose or to fully support, in fact, the introduction of this shared services arrangement to allow us to do yet greater shared working down the line for our mutual benefit, if we so want to do so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, second that, Mr. Mayor.
Right, okay. We'll open this up to debate then. Has there anybody got any questions or comments to make on this item? Marvellous. Okay, so the recommendation is, Dave?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, but basically the recommendation is just seeking approval to sign the shared services agreement with South Ribble Borough Council.
Okay, is there anyone opposed to that? Your silence indicates approval. Dave, can we agree that it's approved?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, on that basis, the recommendation is approved.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 12, council appointments. To consider any changes to committee appointments. I've been told that there are no changes. Is that still the case? Yes, that's still the case. In which case we can move on to item 13, which is an indication of the council's next meetings, and they are all in the report there. Who's introducing this report? Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I propose that those meetings are adopted for the rest of this year, and let's hope that some of those meetings take the normal format back in the council chamber, because events have moved on to allow us to do so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I'm not enjoying Mr. Digital, I must say. So, right, Councillor Wilson.
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Right, okay. Are we agreed on that? Silence indicates that you are. Dave?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation is simply to note the programme of council meetings for the forthcoming year.
Okay, right. Moving on to item 14, questions asked under the Council Procedure Rule 8. If any, no questions have been asked or submitted. So That's probably the quickest item we've done tonight. Item 15, somebody's breathing, please. Mike.
Stop breathing.
Your mic. No, don't stop breathing, just mute your mic. Thank you. Item 15 is to consider the notice of motion, if any, given in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 10 to follow, and that is on pages 199 to 200. Councillor Sharples, please, can you present this report? Thank you. Hang on, I think you're muted.
Muted.
There we go.
I'll start again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the Council, thank you for allowing me to present this notice of motion. Mental health illnesses are sadly becoming more and more common in today's society. Depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder are just some of the variations of this type of illness. Poor mental health can also have a detrimental effect on people's physical health, especially if the problem is untreated. It's estimated that 1 in 4 people will suffer from a mental health problem each year. In 2012-13, the number of people aged 18 plus diagnosed with a form of depression in Chorley and South Ribble was 1,758. In 2018-19, this figure had risen to 3,439. The economic cost to the UK is an estimated 105 billion for dealing with mental health problems. This notice of motion was written prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown. Unemployment, financial difficulties and poverty will undoubtedly add to the pressures of a post-lockdown world. In a recent survey undertaken by the mental health charity Mind, it was reported that 1 in 5 adults with no previous experience of a mental health problem now report that their mental health is either poor or very poor. 75% of 13 to 24-year-olds report that an existing mental health illness is now worse. It's extremely important that we take these figures seriously and prepare for a potential crisis in our communities. And we also need to remember that mental health illness does not discriminate. We also desperately need to overcome the stigma which prevents so many people who are suffering from speaking out and seeking the help that they desperately need. To help with this, I want to mention that I've had my own experiences with depression and in recent years suffered severe anxiety as a result of stress. I hope that my admission to that will help people and encourage them to seek the help and to speak out if they're struggling. Finally, the key aspect of the role of Champion for Mental Health Awareness is to help kickstart conversations about mental health and well-being, to help raise awareness across the borough and to be a representative to those people on this council. I therefore propose this notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Hilton, I believe you wish to second this notice of motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd very much like to second that. I completely agree with everything Councillor Sharples has said. I'm sure you all know by now I hold a clinical role in physical health, and I'm very acutely aware that mental health and physical health are intertwined and often reciprocal. In the 20 years I've been working in the National Health Service, whilst you've seen physical health deteriorate in some ways and get better in others, mental health is the one that seems to be continuously deteriorating. Mental health is one of the most grossly underfunded parts of the National Health Service. We live in an age of social media, which has also contributed to significant decline in mental health. People don't meet each other anymore. A lot of sort of social contact is online, and there's a huge amount of pressure there as well. Mental health issues are significantly going up, as Councillor Sharples has already indicated. COVID obviously has taken a huge toll on society, and the physical health is the one that's been concentrated on the most. I'm acutely aware of what has been going on, but COVID has made this situation significantly worse in terms of social isolation, people's insecurity about their job, their health and family worries. And I share what Councillor Sharples has said about the crisis that we're actually in with mental health at the moment. I truly believe that the next significant health issue in this country after COVID will be one of significant deterioration of mental health. I think appointing this mental health champion, it's a small step, but it's one that we should be beginning to take, and I fully support and second the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The motion has been proposed and seconded. Ruth, do we have anyone who wishes to contribute at this time? Okay, Councillor Walker has just indicated in real life.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our group have no problem with supporting this notice of motion. I totally agree with the background to this notice. It was only last week when I was at a meeting with our school advisor, who stated that she was expecting many mental health problems in children when they returned to school in September. Especially, many of them have been at home since the end of March without them having had any teaching during that time. However, I am concerned how the new position fits in with the current Health and Wellbeing Department, which operates from Union Street and employs about 100 staff. I realise that the department is running in conjunction with LCC, but surely the staff are currently and hopefully identifying many families and children with mental health problems in our area, and no doubt working alongside health workers and doctors helping these families. How therefore will the new councillor appointed work alongside the current exec member and director responsible for this department?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions before I put that question back to the proposer? No. Councillor Sharples, do you want to come back and give an indication of how that situation may be resolved?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor Walker. I can't answer it in its entirety because the actual description of the role still needs to be discussed and firmed out. And I do acknowledge that we've got some extremely talented and hard-working officers in that team and indeed across the council. But unfortunately, they're not able to represent people in this type of forum, whereas an elected member does have the ability to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? If not, my understanding is the council is being asked to consider appointing an elected member as a champion for mental health awareness. Yes. Oh, Councillor Morwood, sorry. Don't wish to stifle debate. Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's only a quick one. I don't think there's been a more important notice of motion for some time, and we've had one or two in the last few months, but this is really the most important time to bring this to the attention of everyone, particularly during this COVID-19. I'm sure that as things, as we get out of this, there will be many cases of those who are suffering or thought they were just about coping, but this situation recently will have just tipped them over the top. And I think this is a great idea to enhance the council's work in supporting those with mental health issues. An elected member, I hope, will not only help inform members and the public, but perhaps help us to perhaps put something together where we can put pressure on government to increase funding for mental health and to bring it to the fore. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry. Councillor Platt.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Now.
Can you hear?
I can hear you, Deborah.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you, Gillian, for the proposal, and I do support it. I just a request really that when it does get fleshed out and decided upon, if we can get to see that, and then we can see the channels to bring items for that lead member or to that lead member, so we could, so we know how to raise things. That would be great. But I support the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ruth? No more comments or questions. Thank you very much. This is a motion that needs to be voted on rather than noted, and therefore I'm going to do the same as I did with the last item and ask any member to indicate if they are against this notice of motion. Nobody. Is there anyone wishing to abstain? Nobody. I think therefore we can take it that this has been unanimously supported. Would that be correct, Dave?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, on that basis, the notice of motion is supported by council.
Okay, congratulations. Item 16 is the exclusion of press and public. To consider the exclusion of press and public for the following items of business. Councillor Bradley.
Can I propose that the press and public are excluded, Mr. Mayor?
Okay, Dave. Right, yes, now I need to ask.
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Peter. Right, at this point I need to ask IT to close down the link, is that correct?